So we call America the land of the free, yet despite comprising only 5% of the world's population, we are responsible for 25% of the world's prison population. If you were to Google the words breaking news murder, 3 stories within the last 24 hours would automatically pop up. Now if you were to type in the words breaking news burglary, 3 more stories within the last 21 hours. Same thing if you were to type in the words breaking news drug bust, 3 more stories within the last 24 hours. Crime in America is clearly a national epidemic, and with over 2 million individuals currently behind bars, it is detrimental that we expend more efforts into preventative measures. Advocates have called upon correctional representatives and legislators to improve everything from healthcare and overcrowdedness to sanitation. However, one aspect that is consistently overlooked is the power of education. To better my understanding of how America can combat our soaring recidivism rate, which is up to 67%, I am researching the relationship between correctional education and recidivism. One particular story that has guided my research process so far is that of Sean Hopwood. Sean lived in Nebraska, and while he was hanging out with one of his friends, they decided to commit an armed bank robbery. So Sean was sentenced to 12 years in prison, and while he was in prison, he became one of the most famous jailhouse lawyers of all time. So while he was actually behind bars, 2 of his cases reached the Supreme Court, and he actually had victories on other inmates' cases as he represented them as a lawyer, still behind bars. And so upon his release, he continued to focus on his legal education, and he actually ended up attending law school. And now currently Sean is a law professor at Georgetown University, which is crazy because if you think about how his life changed basically mainly off of his determination and the power of education, he was able to completely alter the trajectory of his life. And while obviously this isn't possible and going to happen for everyone who is behind bars, it goes to show the power of how college education and attaining GEDs and also finding a career path that fits your educational needs can completely change one's life. And so at Marlborough, we are also fortunate to have an education and learning skills that we may sometimes take for granted. Imagine being a 35-year-old man staring down at a piece of paper and not knowing the difference between the word pen and pin. This harsh reality is one that I'm exposed to every week while I tutor a recently released inmate who I will refer to as Joe, just to protect his privacy. But basically Joe, when he was growing up, he completed up through 9th grade at a school that didn't really pay attention to his educational needs. So now, after he was released from jail, he continually struggles to find someone that will hire him because he doesn't have a high school education or college education. So without a high school diploma, he's faced even more significant barriers than he would have. Studies focused on the relationship between education and recidivism indicate that educational attainment corresponds with a 13% increase in employment opportunities, which generally contributes to an easier societal reintegration. One particular study conducted by the Rand Corporation in 2013 showed that participation in prison education was linked to an over 40% reduction in recidivism. Nearly 700,000 people walk out of prison each year and 7 million out of local jails, meaning that education alone can prevent approximately 3 million individuals from ending up behind bars. A common misconception is that education costs are too expensive for the results they produce. However, reports have proven that the criminal justice system saves approximately $9,000 on each inmate who participates in correctional education. Thus, it is of utmost importance that we formulate and act upon new initiatives if the United States hopes to combat our soaring recidivism rate, increase public safety, and decrease national criminal justice